Hello everyone, welcome back to History Pitch. The mic is on and the second mic is on, and here we are. We are sorry about last week. Last week is going to be the ghost in the system. This is History Pitch 13, and in the midst of the archive, oh thank you very much, Devinda. In the midst of the archive, there will be the ghostly presence of History Pitch 12, because due to no fault of our own, the recording here on the server failed, or the server got full, or something like that. So you missed a whole lot of stuff that we're not even going to begin to try and recount, because here we are on, what's the date today? Is it like 21st of February? And Devinda is here making some noise with mic number 2.
Hello. I broke the mic, but it's okay now.
Okay, you fixed the mic. And Josie is here, and we have quite an action-packed show. We've got Erica talking about horse meat. We've got don't break it again. We've got Simon talking about resistance. We've got LGBT History Month, episode number 2, which we're going to arbitrarily extend LGBT History Month into March. And we've got Dumb Ways to Die, and we're going to find out who Josie thinks she is. But to begin, like we normally do, and I think Ben the Boaty might arrive at some point. He promised me he would tell me things about Marie Jehoda. You can follow Ben the Boaty in my, weekly exchange on Twitter if you like. It's absolutely thrilling, not. Anyway, so, Devinda, what happened today in history?
Well, Tamsin, quite a lot happened. Ooh. In 1431, England begins the trial against Joan of Arc.
Ah.
Ooh. And then... I seem to have lost the next one. But there's quite a few of them. 1874, Benjamin Disraeli replaces William Gladstone as Prime Minister.
I mean, that happened a few times.
Yeah, they kept switching back and forth. But hey, today was the day that they did one of their switches.
I've got one. In 1971, a series of 10 tornadoes killed 120 people in America: Mississippi, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Tennessee.
Ooh. Ooh. Following the theme of death, 1916, the Battle of Verdun in World War II begins. 1 million... World War One. Yeah, did I say World War One? Sorry, 1 million casualties. People dying everywhere.
That's not good. Speaking of World War One, I think today is also the day that Australian troops chase Turkish troops out of Jericho in Dutch Palestine.
Yeah.
And do you know, this is interesting because since the last probably 15 years, I used to have a job in which I had to run the Anzac Day ceremony, and Anzac Day is the kind of commemoration of Australians in war, and it's a big deal. And Turkish troops now march in that parade.
Wow.
So this is this kind of reconciliation.
Wow.
So here they are fighting in
19...
whatever it was, 19... Was it 19? No.
1918. 18, yeah. Quite late on in the war, but ooh, very interesting.
Ben the Boaty's just arrived. We had to signal that in some meaningful way because it's a large undertaking. Yeah.
He looks very tired from his trek.
He does. We're going to hear about his romantic endeavours last week, I hope.
Ooh, yeah.
The incredulous laugh, Ben. I'm not sure, does you? Have we got anything else, or is that it?
One more. 1937, League of Nations bans foreign national volunteers in the Spanish Civil War.
Oh.
Not the one above it.
Oh. I thought you pointed to the other one. Oh, so 1937 again, initial fight of the first successful flying car. What? Waldo Waterman's Aerobile. Aerobile?
Aerobile.
What the? Why would you call it an... that makes more sense. Aerobile. Aerobile.
Oh, Aerobile. Oh, it's not
well,
the bile of arrow.
Yeah. Waldo, you clever man.
Initial flight of the first successful flying car. I don't know what the difference between a flying car. Maybe it's just a car with wings.
Yeah, I think they sort of changed the model of an actual aeroplane and just kind of put a car underneath it, if I remember correctly.
Right. Well, that's a bit of transport history that we never thought we'd...
Yeah.
I'm into transport history, don't get me wrong.
It obviously wasn't successful.
Well, it was successful. It was the first successful flight. That's why it was significant.
I'm pretty sure he crashed in later flights.
You know quite a lot about the Arrowbile.
I didn't realise it was called an Arrowbile.
It's a bit like, it's not, it's a bit like, I read, you know, when I was reading, because a bit precocious young child, and you kept coming across this word, hyperbole. Hyperbole. It's like the Super Bowl, but it's the hyperbole people. Okay, so speaking of cultural artefacts, we're going to turn to Erica, who is very happily back in the seat. And Erica, what do you have for us today?
Hello, Tamsin. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Do you know that we missed you so much last week that the entire macro recording system of Brunel Radio failed to work? So, although we had an episode last weekend, it's kind of like it's like a ghost in the system. So, you know, as far as the archive is concerned, you've never actually missed a week at all.
I love that. Do you know what? Erica's spotters of the future will be really, really up on that historical inaccuracy, won't they?
Yeah, the misleading
kind of
nature
thing will get debated.
Exactly, the misleading nature of the archive. Where was Erica?
Exactly. I love that.
You love that. So in the interim, since we last talked to you, horses have taken over Tesco's.
Oh my God, I love this, Tamsin. And the reason I love this, I'd like to explain to everyone listening, is because I'm a vegetarian, so I haven't eaten any horse. And not only am I a vegetarian, I'm quite a boring, proselytising vegetarian, and I really think the whole world should be a vegetarian.
Are you going to tell us why?
Go on.
Are you going to tell us why?
Yeah, well, the reason I became a vegetarian about 4 years ago was one. Actually, it's because I was single at the time, and I thought it made me sound a bit more interesting.
No, it doesn't. It makes the opposite. It's the opposite. Do you know my friend went on a date with some man she'd never met before, and a blind date, and he asked, and you know, they went out for dinner, and so it became apparent she's a vegetarian, and he asked her, would you cook 2 meals?
Oh my God, that's horrendous.
It's so bad.
That's incredible. Anyway, I was joking about the interesting thing. And I do tell people that, though, just to annoy them. The reason I became a vegetarian is because when I was doing my PhD, I sort of was crazy, like we all are, and I used to lie awake worrying about everything. One of the things I really used to worry about, and I actually still do, is the forthcoming end of the world, right? Because there's nothing like having massively overblowing worries. And so I thought I'd just do what I could to reduce my carbon footprint. So I'm a vegetarian. And also, cause I think it's something to do with my feminism as well, you know, like not dicking over animals, basically, you know, trying to take everyone's opinion into consideration. But anyway, the reason I was interested in horse meat is, I suppose it's because I had some critical distance to it rather than throwing out the Findus vaginas in my fridge. But it's also because I was really, really interested in what it says about the nature of modern capitalism, right? Because this is not, like, supposedly how free market capitalism works is that the consumer's choices push the market to higher and higher standards, right? This is what Thatcher and Milton Friedman would understand as the purpose of neoliberalism, right? Mm-hmm. But what we have here is a market that has really, really devalued the consumer, that actually works in the opposite way, that has so little respect for the opinions or desires of the consumer that it doesn't even matter to the people making lasagnas whether or not they tell the consumer what's in the product. So what exactly has gone wrong here? What would Marx think of this? I think that's what I'm interested in.
Oh, what would Marx say? Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, as I understood it, I've read one conspiracy theory about the horse meat scandal, which I don't think has been getting enough airtime. And it goes as follows. Until about a few years ago, excuse me, the meat production companies used to pad out their minced and sort of offal products with what was called protein, and protein was stuff basically blown off the skeleton of the carcass with a high-powered water hose. So it sort of stripped off all the sinews and anything that was vaguely resembling digestible goods, and that went into the mince instead. and that there was a European Union regulation which restricted this practice, thank God, but as a substitute, the companies needed to find some cheap padding product, and that's when they turned to horse meat. So, I mean, I think this intersects quite well with your little Marxist analysis, which is to say that the market is working in the interests of the multinational companies who are trying to squeeze profits, not just from us, the consumer, but also from the producer, who they're not paying enough for their meat.
Yeah. I think this is amazing that there's so many vested interests that the market cannot fail. It's almost like the banks. Like, at no point did Findus or meat producers say to Tesco, we can't produce it that cheaply. You know what I mean? Because the market here is not being driven by consumers, because actually consumers have less and less choice because of the expansion of the big supermarkets. The market is wholly being driven by these behemoths like Tesco's, and if they say they will only pay the cow producer less for their meat, the abattoir has nowhere else to sell it, so all it can do is sell it for less, right?
Yep.
So once it gets to the stage where it can't make it for less, it can't say, sorry, I can't sell it to you at that price. It just has to do it and take whatever measures it needs to sell cow at whatever price Tesco will buy it for, thus, cheap racehorse meat. And I suppose the exact same thing has happened in the dairy industry as well, where there's only one buyer, and so somehow we've got to the stage where milk is bought from farmers at less than the price it costs to make milk.
And look, that's not even...
So you get the failure of the dairy industry as well.
And that's tragic. And then further along the spectrum, you get the potato industry, where because McDonald's has such a monopoly on the production of potatoes, not so much in England, but in other parts of the world, particularly like Australia, there's only one species of potato grown in the entire state of Tasmania. And that is because they're selling exclusively to the monopoly buyer, which is McDonald's. So it's not like they can even sell their product elsewhere, because the McDonald's has so conditioned the nature of production itself that there's no other market.
Yeah,
at least milk is milk, but like, who wants a kind of, I don't know what the variety of potato is, which only fits, is the most chippable potato that exists.
Yeah. You're right.
Right. So what are we going to do about this?
Oh my God, there's just nothing you can do, right? Like, I just go out of my way not to buy milk in Tesco's and to pay like 60p a litre, a pint instead of 50p a pint. But at the end of the day, like, there's very little we can do. I suppose if there was an effort for a mass mobilisation of people away from the big supermarkets, it might make some difference. So you have to see yourself as part, one little minnow in this big sea.
Well, I guess what we have to start to do is think about the labour that goes into the things that we consume. And this is not just...
Well, exactly.
Yeah, not just in the terms of the shoes that we're wearing or the clothes that we're buying, but, in terms of what we are consuming and eating. And that we have to, make it the politics of food matter. This is what it's about. We need a politics of food.
Well, you're right, and actually I get very, very funny about this, because I think, this is one of the reasons I gave up eating meat, because say if you just go to your local shop and you buy a chicken pesto sandwich, I'm sorry to say this to your people, listeners who eat, but the chicken you're eating probably spent its whole life within a tiny, tiny cage in severe pain, and you eat that as your nice break from work for an hour. So I think to me it's really, really important that I invest in putting really good things in, and it's actually worth spending money on as well. And food's become one of these things that's really been devalued, maybe.
No, that's right. I think that's right. The labour and the labour that goes into the food is devalued, and that's often gendered labour. So.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think I have to go off and live on an allotment.
Well, yeah. On that rather depressing note, Erica.
Oh, sorry I depressed you this week, Tamsin.
I'm going to reach for my cake, which is no doubt come from what's it called? Starbucks. And be a hypocrite.
Here at the University of Leicester, we bake.
Do you bake? Your head of department bakes. My head of department definitely doesn't.
Okay, well, it's nice to chat to you. I'll say something happier next week.
Next week, yes. Welcome back. Thank you, Erica. That was kind of depressing, but the politics of food is something we must all think about. And here we have Ben, who does think about certain kinds of labour that goes into certain stuff, because you've got to, like, stoke the fire in a way that the rest of us don't.
I do, and I've got coal dust under my fingers. My Auntie Elaine was really cross when she saw me the other day. She was like, what have you been doing with your hands? And I was like, you just can't get coal dust out. Can't get coal dust out, it's true. I did an interview once with this welder in Brentford, and at the end of it, he was quite drunk and he just shook my hand and was like, "You have a very soft hand. You don't work, do you?" And I was like, "No, I'm an academic. Leave me alone." But he seemed to think that it was all right, despite that.
You need to work on the calluses.
Very, very soft hand.
I used to play field hockey.
Yeah.
This is more insights into the life of Tamsin. And, I was quite good.
All right.
I played in a really, really, really crap team, and we lost all the time.
Did they listen to the show?
I don't think I did.
I used to play...
How did I finish my story?
Go for it.
What happened when we lost is that the only way I could kind of...
Stop feeding her. Okay. She's so quiet in the morning, and when you put food into her, she's just that monster.
Artemis,
you brought the food.
In order to say that, Artemis just sort of squished me into a corner. That was really... Carry on. Tell your story.
So what happened was, in order to regain any sense of ego, I had to win the handshake competition at the end of the game. So I have the most quickly...
Is this a real competition that they have, or do you just
No, when you go well done.
Yeah, when you go well done at the end of the game.
Actually, that's quite a handshake. I can definitely... Oh, okay. That's quite violent. Townsend, stop. No, Artemis, that's...
Carnage in the radio studio.
Can we get back to something else other than me getting my hand crushed? Yeah, I was going to say, used to play Inter-Theatre Company roller hockey.
Not a sport.
Inter-Theatre Company roller hockey, ladies and gentlemen.
Back to our conversation about sport and
I was awesome at it. I had like these trainers which like had quads in them, and you could just like click the heels together and like you'd be on blades. It was awesome. Yeah.
How good were you?
Pretty
I have
bad.
to tell you, I once dated the under-12 Indian rollerblading champion.
Were you also an under-12?
When you were under 12?
No, that was the past career.
Oh, moving on.
Why no? Let's stay. So, Ben, you're back. You had a nice one-day visit to Edinburgh.
I know, how romantic am I? It was great. And I didn't even miss the radio because you guys didn't press record or something.
We pressed record. The server was full.
Yeah, right, okay.
But Ben did a 24-hour trip to Edinburgh.
I actually did, and I'm not ultra soppy romantic-y sort, but to be honest with you, it was really good. I haven't seen my girlfriend in ages. She was off work. We had a nice day in Edinburgh. Edinburgh's beautiful. It's all right, okay? Don't say anything. You've got a face on you. All right.
We're making it up. It's not as cheesy as the present that Simon gave his girlfriend.
Oh, what did he do?
We must move on.
Okay.
Anyway, so...
Wait, you cannot do that.
So Ben, Marie Jehoda, you promised us.
I know, right? You're distracting me from talking about, like, old white men in hats.
Hang on.
And, like, every week I'm trying to bring an old white man in a hat, and then you get me to...
Margaret Mead. You haven't even done her. I mean...
I know, that's because I don't really know anything about Margaret Mead. I'm a rubbish anthropologist, seriously.
Okay.
But Marie Jehoda is
There
awesome,
is a
so thank you for getting me to do this.
Named after Marie Jehoda, in which the history faculty have their offices.
And the anthropologists, so it's just the social sciences sort of building, isn't it? It's quite nice.
So what did you find out?
I found out that she was just bloody brilliant. She was born...
Did she text you? Did she text you?
Yeah, this is... I'm looking on my phone because I've got texts from Marie Jehoda. Haven't she died in 2001? It's very sad. No, she was born in 1907 in Vienna. She was a Jewish socialist, so she was really popular in Austria. And so during the 20s and 30s, she did her doctoral research on unemployment, because there's lots of unemployment going on at the time, something to do with industry. I'm not a historian, I don't really care. But, yeah, she basically was looking at what unemployment, apart from the obvious, being a bit hungry and not having much money, does for people. And she found out that just this lack of having focus to your time and the lack of social connection that you get through industrial employments when factories close is really damaging. So she started off really as a psychologist and then became sort of like a social anthropologist, really. But she was always more of a psychological anthropologist. She was in prison very briefly.
Why? What
in
for?
1937 for being
in Austria.
Yeah, in Austria when with the fascist government after the Anschluss, and but very briefly for being a socialist and a bit of an agitator and looking out for unemployed people's rights. And then she moved to Britain during the Second World War, and then it was after the war in the 50s that she moved to what became Brunel University and started the first psychology thin sandwich course.
Oh.
She was here, which was brilliant, and taught here between 1958 and 1965.
And what was her? What did she continue to work on?
Her thing was categories of ideal mental health. So she had this idea of what it is to be a healthy person in society psychologically. So her five categories of ideal mental health, which unemployed people are deprived of, were time structure, social contact, collective effort and purpose, social identity and status, and my phone stopped. And the fifth one, which was regular activity. So without, if you're unemployed, you don't have those social glue kind of things, which help you function.
In the context, extending the discussion we just had with Erica,
yeah.
You also lack a lot of those things. If you're working as a casualised employer, moving around between jobs.
Oh, we're talking about neoliberalism again. So, yeah, I think underemployment and this short-term, temporary, flexible workforce thing is really, really damaging for just those reasons. Because, for one thing, people aren't as unionised as they were, which has its problems. But also, yeah, people can't make connections. They have to be a lot more mobile, moving from city to city. There was that thing when the Conservative government a couple of years ago said that if there's no jobs in your town, you should just get on a bus and find one in the next town, which I don't have to point out is the most ridiculous thing that's ever been said by a human.
Well, I don't know. Michael Gove.
No, yeah, let's not talk about Gove. This is going to go into dangerous territory. But yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. And what institutions, such as employers, do is they capture the forces of the market and humanise them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in my granddad's generation, when my granddad was driving his delivery truck for Nestles, as he called it, when he moved down to work for Nestles in Hayes.
We used to call it Nestles as well.
Did you?
And in Australia. And then at one point it just changed. I think the ads shifted.
Oh, Nestle. Ooh.
It's nice.
It sounds a bit continental, a bit posh, doesn't it?
I think that's probably what happened.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that selling, a bit like, what's her name? Alison came last week and told us about beer ads, which was actually fascinating. And how Kronberg...
Shame that nobody pressed record, really.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, carry on.
You like to... I'm fighting against this narrative.
It's okay. It's all right. If I mention it enough time, people are just going to...
It was probably too French, and then French became a thing that was sellable.
Quite. But anyway, I'm always torn between the bit of me which is like, oh, everybody should just be living in a commune, eating, growing their own maize and eating yogurt, and the bit of me which actually thinks that, in wage labour and industry and factories are actually quite good for people, but obviously the bad side is that you end up with a downtrodden working class. But actually, the amount of job stability that you got, and the old sort of grassroots old labour union was actually a way of people having structure to their lives, having a real sense of community. I think there needs to be a balance. And it makes me politically quite uncomfortable because you feel like you're going, all the good old days. But
that's right. Yeah, I mean, I think we've got to be careful to romanticise the past, because it's not like the world in 1962 was very good for women or anyone who's black or gay or marginally not a white man that went to Eton. And so we have to be careful about that. But I think this relationship between freedom and constraint is one that really needs to be thought, because we've gone so far down the politics of choice that we feel like alienated. You know, Durkheim is back on the scene. This is what Latour is writing about now. Okay, let's move on. It's getting Artemis is wilting.
That was a bit serious and political, wasn't it?
I know. It's Erica's.
Could you please clarify whether it's Jahoda or Yahoda?
No.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
It's probably Yehuda.
Yehuda. That's a bit more Jewish, isn't it? Yehuda. Yeah, probably that. I should know. I'm a bit Jewish myself.
Quickly, and it would become Yoda.
Marie Yoda.
Okay, so let's see where Simon might. Oh no, we're talking about bloody political resistance with Simon.
Oh God, there's this theme.
All right, Simon, come and raise the tone. Simon. Oh, are you a bit sick?
Yes.
Oh, poor Simon.
Yeah.
What's the nature of the illness?
I think all the bile that just builds up inside me eventually,
It has to get out at some point.
does.
And you don't think we've been too nice to you in History Pitch recently? That hasn't been a suitable outlet for your, inner vitriol.
Well, looking back on last week, I now think I may have been feverish.
I thought we had a nice chat.
Precisely. Feverish.
And so, has this led you to any great philosophic reflections on the nature of history?
I feel very marginalised.
Do you?
Yes.
In your North London suburb?
Yes. In my white, male, heterosexual identities, yes.
Marginalised. And how is this manifest in your historical reflections?
Well, I'm thinking about the research done in the 70s and the 80s on slave revolts, on female resistance, individual female resistance in the 19th century. I'm thinking about convicts in Australia.
Oh, yeah, I think about them all the time.
Well, we don't go there, do we, Jan?
No.
Breakfast show and all that. And also, of course, my favourite people in the world, Irish Catholic peasants in the 18th and 19th centuries.
Oh, right, we count them as subaltern too. I mean, isn't this what this is? A kind of corrective to the 200 more years of white heterosexual men writing history?
Well, there's that great stat, isn't there, about French history in the 19th century that it just involves 200 men. You know, you look at all the history books written, just add them up, it's 200 men. Everything else is just faceless masses.
Yeah, so how can you kind of critique this necessary corrective?
Well, because it's now... This started before we were born, certainly before your listeners were born.
But it's not like there stops being... that the number of women in the world is, there stops being 50% of the population being female, let alone black.
Well, the corrective has now got to the stage where it's been overcorrected. If you're actually abandoning historical method to see things which aren't there because of present politics.
Oh, come on! All history is the history of present politics, and how can you look askance upon the Black Panther movement or feminists who wanted to look back and recover a past and see a past and in fact create a past for the purposes of the politics of the present? Isn't that what we all do all the time?
But we're academic historians, and there's a historical method, and even though we disagree about lots of things, historians, there's some agreements about that. And if the sources can't hold the weight of the interpretation, then you have to ditch the interpretation.
Which sources can't hold the weight of which interpretations?
Well, I think if you're going in and saying, right, I've gone through this woman's diaries and she's heavily dieting, jumping to an immediate assumption that this is a form of resistance against the patriarchy is perhaps a bit forward.
Well, there's a kind of reading into that story, perhaps a kind of interpretation that may suit. I mean, historians of sexuality, we were talking about this last week, face this question all the time. How do you write about people's identities and performances in the past with using words that they may not have recognised or in fact even used to describe themselves? Is that possible? But is not the focus on subjectivity and bodies actually quite important? This is a shift away from, a really large-scale shift away from the writing of
cotton moving around the world and military endeavour and, you know, the 200 men that are running politics, towards a much more ground-up approach to everyday experience. This is important.
I would agree with that, but what I'm arguing is the corrective has gone too far. I mean, if you take the example of Irish Catholic peasantry in the 19th century, we've got to think about how they were operating within their circumstances, and they were making the best of their situation. They're not Jews. They're not being manipulated by the elite, and equally, they're not heroically resisting. They've got all kinds of different things they need to do. I mean, their goal is not always to overthrow English oppression. There's other things that they're trying to do, and they work with the system they're in.
So, I mean, I can accept this point, actually, if you're saying that those are the binarisation, right, between resistance and collaboration is a kind of very Manichaean, very two-dimensional approach to the historical record or the historical past experience. But in all sorts of ways, we exert our agency, right? And the exertion of agency can be not eating. In fact, it's often not eating or eating too much or whatever. That doesn't have to be framed as a kind of great resistance to patriarchy, but neither should it necessarily be ignored or marginalised.
What I'm just saying is, I'm not trying to argue that maybe the use of overcorrected is wrong. I'm not arguing that this idea of dupes and, you know, a faceless, brainless mass who can be manipulated has now been replaced by loads of people who are in their own ways heroically resisting discipline, oppression, and now we have to bring it back to somewhere in the middle. I think we have to kind of almost transcend, let's see some other history terms, popular, transcend that and recognise there are all kinds of motives for why a woman might be starving herself or withholding sex. You know, there might be other things going on there.
But those motives are all about personal agency of some kind.
I'm not disputing that, but agency doesn't always have to be one way. You don't go from being passive
to
being an agent of heroic resistance.
No, but in the history that was written before 1970 largely didn't even pay attention to that motivation, to that notion of an individual's, an ordinary person's, a subaltern person's ability to shape their own life in ways that were meaningful to them.
I'm a great fan of the idea of history being wrong, and that being, you know, it doesn't always have. It's something that students kind of find in their heads hard to kind of get straight about, because it doesn't have to be true.
It's never true.
But it can be wrong, quite substantially wrong, but it's been very useful. It's made you think about certain things. What I'm arguing is that the attempt, and it often comes from outside academia, you know, from blogs and from journalists and from kind of politicians, to not depart from an accepted line can limit the work of a historian. And I think sometimes we don't back up those historians enough. I mean, we're not dealing with people who are just being racist or sexist or anti-Irish or whatever. They've seriously looked at the sources, and they've looked at work being done in other disciplines, and they've reached a rational conclusion from their point of view. And then you argue against it. You don't just say, without even really engaging with it, this can't be correct.
Right, so this is a clarion call for a discursive sort of public sphere in which we are making arguments, based with supported evidence. See, first years out there, this is how you write an essay. And that this is actually a really important civic function. Well, I can get behind you on that.
We do say to students, I mean, we encourage them to take part in a public debate. History is a debate, it's a public debate. You have a place to play in this debate. But there are certain limits on it. You know, if you go onto an internet message board, there are certain limits on what you can do and what you can say. And the limit is you've got to be able to justify it with a coherent argument backed up by sources. And if you're just twisting those sources to such an extent because you want to say something, then you're missing out on the richness of life. And in many ways, you're doing a disservice to the experience of the people you regard as your forebears.
Yes. Now, let us just conclude by saying, Simon, you are not for a minute suggesting that the history of women's experience should not be written.
No, not at all.
You're not for a minute suggesting that the history of people who are not white European men should not be written.
Certainly not. I'd be out of a job.
You'd be out of a job, exactly. To next week, think about historicise love. Can we write the history of emotions? This is a big thing that historians are doing.
Okay. And you're arguing we can, and I'm arguing, given that I'm so cold and terrible, you can't. Right, fine.
Okay? You can make a case. You can make a case that love is transcendent. You know, it's not historically specific.
Are you going to start singing?
Love changes everything. No.
I imagine that will get cut.
No way. No, I didn't cut last week. I didn't cut drunk week. Tavinda just yelled out the word scrotum. It's all chaos. So we're going to switch.
Can we have the mic up?
It was Josie who suggested Ben should get a scrotum like cat.
No, I said the bald cats. I didn't suggest
Which look
a
like
name.
scrotums.
We're not yelling scrotums.
Nobody knows what you're talking
Horrible.
about.
But of course, Tamsin didn't know what we were speaking about because she was listening to herself and laughing. Like, ha ha, how funny am I? Good for me.
But a professor of dance says she's got good energy, so that's all that matters.
I do have good energy. Where did you meet that guy? In Brunel University Arts Centre last night. Oh, okay.
Ooh, Brunel.
Out there on the weekend.
Hooking up couples.
Okay, moving along. Josie, take the microphone. Take the microphone.
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Ooh. Now, you've been in the studio every week.
I think I've missed one. Like,
You've
ever.
missed one. Yeah.
Okay,
you're not
being interviewed then. I'm really sorry.
No, but we don't know who she is. You know, she's been his presence amongst us, and we have no sense of her backstory. So it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how are you? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Plymouth in the southwest of England.
Do you know that my relatives hail from Plymouth?
I did not know that. Why would I know that?
Plymouth Rock. Okay, and they didn't migrate to America or Australia. And has your family always lived in Plymouth?
It seems like it, yeah. I kind of have to go back to my just one great grandmother to find someone who wasn't hailing from even England, so yeah.
But there's been a lot of internal migration in England.
Not a huge amount. Like, most of my relatives on both my dad and mum's side still live in Plymouth or close to Plymouth.
That's quite cool. You can do this thing on... I've never actually managed to re-find this website, but you can find out, put your surname into the website, and it will tell you where the concentration of your surname was in the 1911 census, and it compares it to the 2011 census, which is kind of cool, because then you sort of see the migration shifts over time. So, Door.
Yeah.
They haven't moved very much.
It doesn't seem like it. They've been in or around Plymouth for at least 100 years.
Okay. What were they doing 100 years ago in Plymouth?
I honestly don't know.
Digging?
Maybe. Or being farmers, or being part of the Navy.
Oh, yeah. What is the family story? So you don't know what your grandparents did?
Well, I kind of know what my grandparents did, because my grandparents are all very young.
Okay.
Like, both my grandmothers are still alive, but I never met either of my grandfathers.
Okay, why?
They both died.
Prematurely young, by the time.
One of them, in like the 80s through motorcycle death, and the other one a couple of years ago before I met him from lung cancer.
Okay. And so it's a very matriarchal family.
Yeah, it seems like it. There's like, so far as I can tell, on both sides, there's like millions of children. Like, millions of children. Everyone's like, my great-grandmother and her mother, and like, my own mother had like 5 children, and there's like, the average number of children seems to be at least 5, and one of them had like 12 children, and that was in the like 1940s. So,
well, they're not Catholics.
No. Well, not so far as I know.
So these big families, and it sounds like they all survived, all the children.
I think most of them did, yeah.
So you kind of got the kind of old, huge family culture intersecting with the NHS, which means they all survived. I mean, they wouldn't necessarily have always survived.
Yeah.
So what did your grandparents do in the post-war era?
Be born.
Yeah. And then? Before they started having children?
My nan on my mum's side got pregnant and then like moved to Bermuda and moved back. And
why did she move to Bermuda?
Because her then husband, who was not my grandfather, was working there as part of the Navy.
Sorry. So the father of the child was not the husband.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah, that seems to have happened on several generations, I found. Like, on both my dad and mum's side, the sort of matriarch has had a child before with someone else, and that child has, in one generation, like a great-grandmother, she had a child that got adopted and sent off, got adopted by a family who moved to Australia. And another one had a child who was the age of... No, it's not you.
Not me.
No. Be a lot older than you.
You don't know.
Yeah. And another one had a child that like died when it was 2, and then she just started a new life. So.
Okay. And but these stories are not silenced. They're not in the... They're told in the family.
No, not exactly. It's kind of
You trolled them out of the skeletons out of the closet.
a couple of them, yeah. But sometimes it's more like, oh, we've just discovered that this happened, and then no one really talks about it again.
So is that a shameful thing? Like, why does no one talk about it?
I guess partially shame, partially because it's irrelevant. Like, it doesn't make a difference to their lives, really. If this person, like, unless they come back into our lives, like the child that moved to Australia got into contact with us.
Have they?
Yeah, like a few years ago. It's not you, Tamsin.
That's fine.
So that was nice.
Yeah. I mean, is that weird? What's it like to be the family of the person that gets back in touch? I mean, you always hear the stories of the adoptees who are finding their birth parents.
I think it was really, really weird because it was my nan's sister. Like, she got back into touch, and it was really weird for my nan because they had the same name. Like,
oh wow.
Yeah, so the mother had named the first child Carol, and then had another daughter named Barbara, and then my nan had also named her Carol. So obviously she had an affinity for this name.
Yeah.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what has happened? So has your generation of I mean, you've made the big venture all the way into London. Has your generation spread out a bit, or are they still in Plymouth?
I think my oldest brother is in Manchester now, but up until like last year he was still in Plymouth, and all of my other siblings are still in Plymouth. But it's still relatively young days, so yeah. But my dad has moved out of Plymouth, and my aunt on my mum's side has moved to America. So.
Okay, so this kind of...
There's a gradual spreading away from Plymouth.
Because apparently people in Britain are the least mobile they've been for like 300 years, in that more people now live within 10 miles of where they were born than at any other time in the last 300 years. So, I mean, your family seems in some ways to be
kind of,
evidence
but
of that.
I was born in Yorkshire, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how did you miss that out? In the kind of, we've always lived in Plymouth.
Because we moved around for like the first 3 years because my dad was part of the army.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
It's the army got a base in Plymouth?
I think they've got like a territorial base, but I don't know. I don't think so. That's why we're moving around. Presumably.
Yeah. I mean, that must be a really interesting life. We're talking about institutions and how they can hear people together, and the army is kind of one that facilitates mobility, but has hugely strong traditions around the organisation. So did you have to ask people about this when you were going to do...
Yeah, I did ask, but neither of my grandmothers could really remember anything. Like...
Or did they pretend not to?
Oh, well, I don't know. I can't really tell if they were pretending to not remember, but essentially all they could give me was, like, the names or how many children there were. Like, they didn't know what jobs people did, although apparently one great-uncle on my mum's side died in First or Second World War. It's Second World War he got shot by Germans as they were running away from Normandy or something, or Dunkirk. No, it was Normandy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this is interesting. I'm gonna ask Erica to do a session on this. Oh, the forgetting, because there seems to be a lot of forgetting that goes on, and the story. Every time we have someone come in, I had to ask my grandmother. These aren't stories that get told.
Yeah, but my grandparents, my grandmother they can't remember, so it's also not helpful.
No, but it means it's just a bit late to ask them. But those aren't the kind of oral tradition of the family that repeats its myths over and over again.
Yeah.
Thank you, Josie. Excellent. So we're gonna continue with the Josie Fest because she's got a LGBT History Month segment, which I haven't listened to. So this is going to be good.
Hello, and welcome to Section 2 of the Gay History Month. I'm here with Emma, and we're going to talk to you about gay history from the 1300s to just before the 1800s. So, starting with 1327, the deposed King Edward II of England was killed, allegedly, by forcing a red-hot poker through his rectum. Edward had had a history of conflict with his nobility, and they had repeatedly banished his former lover, Piers Gaveston, the Earl of Cornwall, from the court. But, obviously, that didn't work out well. Anyway,
1483, the Spanish Inquisition begins, and sodomites were stoned, castrated, and burnt. Between 1540 and 1700, more than 1,600 people were prosecuted for sodomy.
Sad stuff. 1533, King Henry VII passes the Buggery Act in 1533, obviously, making all male-male sexual activity punishable by death. This also included oral sex, and also included bestiality.
Nice. 1649, the first known conviction for lesbian activity in North America occurs when Sarah White Norman is charged with lewd behavior, each with other upon a bed, with Mary Vincent Hammond in Plymouth, in Massachusetts, and she was under 16. Hammond was under 16 and wasn't prosecuted.
No idea what happened to Sarah White Norman then.
Not good things.
Yeah, probably not good things at all. And now in 1794, the Kingdom of Prussia abolished the death penalty for sodomy, which was quite substantially earlier than all other European countries. I think other than Poland, which we learn is it never had any crimes against homosexuality. No.
But Prussia had some reasoning behind what it was doing.
Yes, yeah. So I'm going to talk quickly about Frederick the Great, who was the king of, the King Emperor of Prussia. He ruled between 1740 and 1786. So this was before the sodomy laws were repealed. And basically, Frederick the Great was very well known for his military ability. But early on in his life, he sort of went against his father a lot. He was very strict in his upbringing. And Frederick had himself a very, very close male best friend. Best friend, whom his father very much disapproved of, to the extent that this best friend was executed and Frederick was imprisoned and forced to watch the execution, which, is not very nice at all and was probably left some serious psychological scars. So after that, Frederick's all imprisoned and he's forced to marry Elizabeth Christine of Brunswick-Bevern, and they had no children. And as soon as his father died and Frederick the Great becomes king, he basically doesn't see his wife. He sees her once a year, so it's like a really formal visit.
And not even Christmas and birthday.
No, she gets one per year. I wonder when it was, really. Maybe it was like maybe a birthday treat. But there are lots of rumours about his sexuality with very good reasoning. But there's also some counter-arguments. Some say that he was celibate. His physician argued that it was because he had some surgery and he didn't want the public to know that he'd had a venereal disease and had some genital surgery. So he'd prefer that his public thought he was homosexual than think that he, was disfigured. But he did have a lot of interesting relationships. There is quite a lot to also prove that he was gay, or at the very least bisexual. He was very well known in his court for having a lot of homoerotic banter, and he wrote a very interesting poem.
Yes. A moment of lust is worth as much to him who enjoys it as a century of honour, is one of the lines from that poem. So, little bit, doesn't matter about your reputation if it's really fun. And that's thought to be about his lover, or alleged lover, Francesco Alvarotti, who was an Italian essayist who travelled a lot with the king. And there was thought to be some stuff going down between those two.
So I think one of many possible male lovers there.
Yeah, but this one wasn't murdered. He died of tuberculosis, and then Frederick published a book, or sent a book to be published in his honour.
And that's a very nice thing to do. Yeah. And are you going to talk about Edward II?
Going back to him, he was thought to be in a homosexual relationship with Gaveston of Cornwall.
So this was like 400 years earlier?
Yeah, I think this was like our first point from earlier, but Piers Gaveston. And his wife was not very happy about that.
I can't imagine why.
His family, his wife, his children kind of resented his closeness with other males, and particularly Gaveston. Modern historians are pretty divided between whether or not they were like romantically or sexually involved, but there have been quotes from various places saying things like, "There was no question that the king and his favourite were lovers." So not all of that divided.
Yeah, it's kind of clear there what's going on. It's pretty much with a lot of pre-20th century history, especially as we see history, it's very much reading between the lines and trying to work out who it is they're referring to, whether they're actually explicitly referring to homosexual activity, or if it's just vague allusions to try and dishonor someone and get them a bad reputation after the fact. It's very hard to work that out, but it seems to be, in the case of Frederick and in Edward's case, they were almost probably homosexuals or bisexuals, some kind of gay. They definitely were.
Some kind of gay. Well, they don't have very happy wives.
That's definitely. But we don't know whether the wives were gay. Well, I don't know about Frederick's wife. She might have been very happy with the formal arrangement. She might, she may have been a lesbian herself. So we don't know. We don't know the circumstances. And it's probable that we'll never know because of the difficulties that surround LGBT history and historiography. It's almost impossible to really know for sure a person's sexuality. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, everyone's good.
Okay, we'll be back.
Another era complete.
Yeah, next time for the 19th and maybe some of the 20th century.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Set fire to your hair, poke a stick at a grizzly bear, eat medicine that's out of date, use your private parts as piranha bait, dumb ways to die, so many dumb...
That's right, it's everyone's favourite segment from everyone's favourite radio team member, Artemis. Artemis?
Hello, good morning.
You're very chirpy.
I I'm in a very good mood today, so I'm going to give you an option today.
Oh,
so
I get choice?
Yes, you do.
You're giving me choice?
Yeah, for once. It's the last time, so enjoy. So, would you like me to talk about last week's Fat Ass Rose, or proceed to the next one?
Oh, yeah, both. I mean, Fat Ass Rose was so good.
Okay. Let's rewind a bit. Let's pretend it's Valentine's Day, and we're looking for something romantic. So, a romantic way to die, which is dump at the same time. So we talked.
It's quite a high order.
So we talked about the Titanic last week, which has this amazing scene towards the end where the fucking fat ass, that bitch.
Oh, you're gonna have to bleep all this out.
leaves the hottie Leonardo, a.k.a. So you see, guys, when she was to fly, she was, oh, Jack, I'm flying.
Oh,
you know what? Throw the bitch in the water and survive.
I believe your point.
This was
Couldn't she just move over?
Move a bit. Move. Just move. There was enough space for both of them, and more. On that was like if someone was to die, let them die, both of them. Like that's a romantic thing to do. That's the Shakespearean thing to do.
Oh, you also thought Shakespeare? That was a pretty dumb day.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like wake up,
Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, wake up. Send a text. Something. Say something. Write it somewhere. Say I'm not dead. This is something. I might put a note on your mouth. He kissed her before. I
think isn't that how he dies? By getting the poison?
No, he killed himself. So he goes there. He sees her death. He commits suicide. She wakes up. She sees him dead, and she kills herself. That's like playing dumb. And we were saying how they were both 14 or something. Yeah. Like
she was definitely like underage.
Underage.
Way older.
There, it was even pedophilia.
Yeah, that's Italian for you,
God.
isn't it? So, what's the Prime Minister for God? What's his name? Berlusconi, the president. Yeah. In a court of law. So, what was this week's other one?
This week's okay. Yeah, let me.
He was just following trends.
I'm gonna use the word tiara if you don't stop. Okay, so we're gonna move to the modern era. To Boston in the US, where the 20-year-old Jeff Lucas was found dead after he tried to use hockey straps to bungee jump off a 70-foot railroad trestle. So the police said that the fast food worker tapped a bunch of these straps together, wrapped an end around one foot, anchored the other end to the trestle, jumped, and hit the pavement. Right?
So
you take rubbers.
You misjudged the weight.
I don't know what. Maybe the length. Yeah. You never know. You just jump and see what happens.
Kill someone.
Just be glad he didn't. Rip
Like what? He was
off.
so. We were. Yeah, maybe. We wanted to try it, and okay, yeah.
Amateur bungee jumping.
And I have another one.
Oh my gosh! This day just keeps getting better.
Yeah, if we hadn't missed last week, I wouldn't have to speak about fat ass. So, Kenneth Charles Barger accidentally shot himself to death during the night. So, awakening to the sudden sound of a ringing telephone beside his bed, he reached for the phone but grabbed instead his gun, which he kept on the bedside table next to the phone. The gun apparently discharged as he drew it to his ear, thinking it was a phone. You know what? Let those people die. It's better. Don't let them breed. Castrate them or let them get killed on their own way. Do you hear that, Obama? Take guns away. Take guns away. People are dangerous.
Danger to themselves. Yeah. Ben, are you all right? You don't look okay.
Tiara.
It's okay. Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'd like to issue a disclaimer in case... Shut up.
Oh, Jack.
Right, in case Sarah is listening, my gorgeous, lovely girlfriend Sarah, who I love, right, the tiara thing is the fact that I brought her a tiara because she deserves it, because she's fantastic, okay? Now everyone on the radio knows I don't care. Right, okay, Sarah, love you.
I just cut the mic off to stop Artemis. Jeez. So, sorry, Ben. We're sorry. Because actually, Sarah, you're probably one of our two listeners, you and Ethel. And we do want to also apologise to Ethel, who was probably refreshing her computer continually all last Friday, waiting for History Pitch 12, which is now a ghost in the system. And Jack Vera has slipped into the studio. And I gave Jag Vera an educational task a few weeks ago, which was a challenge to learn to ask questions. And so as a consequence, Jag Vera decided that he's going to ask a question every week at History Pitch, which I'm slightly frightened about. So I'm going to put the microphone up, Jag Vera, and bear in mind that, you know, I don't know lots of stuff.
Well, isn't that what the research for the week is for?
Well, no, you ask me now. Oh, I get a whole week. No, that's boring. Instant gratification. I'll say I don't know.
Fine. How much does your next book cost?
Oh, my God, £65.
£65? Nobody's going to buy that.
Yeah, I'm going to buy that.
You tell that to the publisher. Look, I know. I know no one's going to buy it. It's a thrilling read about universities in the British Empire, people.
Do you give a CD with it at least? A CD, some photos of you.
A book on tape. A book on tape. That'd be hilarious. I could do the...
Are you doing research for it next year?
No, I'm writing another book next year and the year after.
Another 65 miniseries.
And miniseries. Yeah, I did talk to a TV producer about this last week. But
we can be your researchers.
Yay!
Yeah, please give us jobs.
No one else will.
Oh, Jack, I'm flying.
It's the times in industry. Jack, I'm dying. Get off the door!
I'm flying.
Actually, the project is about a boat with people on it, and we'll have some love story, and maybe what's in it?
Let's do Rose.
Badass Rose can be a character.
Yeah, let's do a podcast on that.
Yeah,
and include it in the book.
Oh, Jack, it's so freezing in there, isn't it? Well, too bad. It's okay up here. You're sinking. You're sinking. Goodbye, Jack. I love you. I love you. Can you hear? Oh, no, you can't hear me. You're dead. Tough luck.
Was that it, Jack Vera?
Well, there was one proper question, but do we have time?
No, no one's rocked up to get it out yet.
Yeah,
So
what shall they come in the next 5 seconds?
Yeah, then we'll cut you off.
Right. Now, you complained in the last lecture we had that you had marked quite a few essays on migration and mobility.
Mm.
So it's a sort of migration question tied in with what the lecture...
Yours one of them?
No.
Half yours.
Don't have any hopes for mine. It was probably still crap.
Okay.
Edit that
I couldn't speak. It's all anonymised. The essays are all anonymised. Press on.
And it's also to do with the lecture we had with the New Zealander.
James Bellich.
Yes.
Professor James Bellich, OZN.
He mentioned that people who migrated to settler colonies such as Canada, America and Australia had been peoples who had moved about before. Now, what I know is that you are Silesian, yet you are from Australia.
And Plymouth.
And Plymouth.
But what I know is that the Silesians themselves originally settled in Silesia from Germany proper after the original Goths were driven out by the Huns. So.
Is this going to be a question?
Yes. I have to explain the logic, otherwise it looks random.
Yeah, you know, okay.
Were the Silesians one of these travelling peoples?
Well,
were they mercenaries for the British Empire?
No, they weren't mercenaries. They were kind of what the Germans did, right? In Australia, anyway, and possibly in America, and I don't know about Latin America. But the Germans that came from Silesia were basically uneducated peasants who were fleeing religious persecution, in quotes, because the King of Prussia was creating a Protestant church and they didn't want to be in on it. But they went out to places like South Australia and they effectively became the artisan class. So they would make all the seals, and farmers as well, but so they produced vegetables that they sold to all these in South Australia, which was a free colony. It didn't have convicts, South Australia. And so all these migrants migrated, Church of England migrants largely, but also dissenters migrated, wanting to sort of set up a kind of, they wanted land, they wanted to kind of be a certain established class in South Australia. And it was the Germans that did a lot of the making stuff and growing stuff, and it was the Aboriginals that did a lot of the service in the house. And this is a sort of division of labour, a racial division of labour, which is kind of masked in a lot of the history. But that's what they did. And in fact, in places like Queensland, 80% of the population of Queensland in 1880 was German. So, okay, I'm winding it up. That's it. That's the answer.
Right.
I don't know. I've never been to Silesia.
Close enough. Next week I'll try and come up with something for social history for you.
Okay. Gosh, ask Tamsin a question. Excellent. I'll try and be more interesting. God, this is good. You should ask questions in my lectures.
You don't give us an opportunity.
That is not true.
You lecture for 2 hours straight.
I took you to the cemetery last week.
All these trips.
Yeah, you take them, but you never take them. Okay, guys, you know what? She's never taking us anywhere outside the classroom. Okay, do not
You
complain.
went to my office once.
Oh, yes.
On that note, ladies and gentlemen...
Oh, no.
Oh, Ben.
I did a shout-out to my mum a couple of weeks ago, and I forgot to mention that she's been a history teacher for 17 years. But no, she has been, and so we'll talk to her at some point.
Yeah,
and so she knows
her name?
history. Her name's Marilyn.
Hello,
Marilyn
Marilyn.
Bowles.
Marilyn, if we called you on the telephone during one of our shows, would you answer?
She'd probably be at work. We'd probably have to pre-record it. She's teaching, I know, actually out there doing
Maybe her
it.
kids could do something.
Field work.
Why don't we go there? Where is she? In Slough.
In Slough, on the Britwell.
Do
It's
you think
bit rough.
her students could do a little segment for us?
Risky. I'll ask her.
Yeah. Marilyn, that would be great.
All right, okay, so, hi, Mum.
Hi, Marilyn. If you have any special requests, Marilyn, we'd be happy to do a segment on them. If your students want to, write in, we could totally engage with our listeners. Ethel remains quite silent most of the time.
They could tweet us in. If they want to, they could tweet us and we could read their tweets on air.
On air.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. On that note, it's been great. Team, it's been great. Next week is going to be History Pitch 14.